Welcome to Aquarian Anarchy, ladies and gentlemen. It is our new night, our new time. We welcome you here. This is the new tradition. Get ready. Your Sunday evenings will be filled with joy. Emma Goldman tells us civilization has been a continuous struggle of the individual or of groups of individuals against the state and even against society. That is, against the majority subdued and hypnotized by the state and state worship. And now you get the new Sunday night edition of Aquarian Anarchy with my homie Marcus and my other homie Nico.
Welcome aboard.
It's time to get into it. We're gonna kind of let you peek into us a little bit tonight. How y'all been doing, gentlemen?
Tired as shit.
That way. Yeah. Tired
Right.
as fuck, man.
Facts.
Part of it is
way.
I had a big weekend last weekend, and we'll get into that later. But yeah, it was, and I'm still recovering, and yeah, that's a lot of cannabis. That's all I gotta say.
Nico, he was telling me, he's like, man, Nico just doesn't know. He just doesn't know what he's missing. One day he's gonna have to come down here.
Every time it's either a car situation or a car situation, and this time is my other car, and I had basically procrastinated in getting my car fixed in certain areas, but the windshield was a new thing, and I wasn't expecting it, so I was dumb. And at work, I broke it at work. I cracked my windshield at work, and it just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger and bigger. And it didn't help because, driving in Chicago is like NASCAR driving with potholes. So that doesn't really help.
Like Louisiana.
Yeah, it doesn't help.
Yeah.
Well, so Marcus, I'm gonna kind of let you drive here because this episode was your idea to get into. What do you call it? Our ancestors
of freedom.
Of freedom, yeah.
Sure.
So Marcus had us each give him two or three people who were our inspiration or whatever. And so Marcus, take it away.
Sure. And one of the things that this means to me is my spirituality is, I wouldn't say rooted in the understanding of ancestors, whether that's physical ancestors or adopted ancestors, as you will. But it's important to me. And one of the biggest portions for me about that is looking at the people who weren't blood related, but influenced me through my life. And I started that recognition years ago spiritually. And I thought it would be a good idea to kind of go over and be thankful at the time around Halloween, which is generally, a celebratory time for ancestors. And so I thought it would be a good idea for us to kind of talk about not only the people that we chose that were big philosophical influences, but our parents, our the people that made us who we are. Each of the three of us are still developing and still learning and having things that change, I'd say pretty frequently. But there are some big shoulders that we stood on to get to the ideas that we have. Some of those are still alive. Good example is Ron Paul. But I thought we would honor them. And I guess I could kind of start off by just talking about that. For me, one of the biggest influences on me, and this has really been for a very long time, was Thomas Paine. Common Sense was early on when I was studying, religion and political thought. He hit me because he's not coming from this draconian Christian point of view that I really kind of saw, like people like Washington or even to a degree Jefferson, who was also a deist. But Paine couches it in terms that are more general spirituality. So I liked that. And then I started studying and I got beyond Common Sense and got into some of his other works, such as The Rights of Man and The Age of Reason. And he became probably next to, for those that know me, I have been into the occult for a long time, and Aleister Crowley is truly the biggest influence on me when it comes to people that have influenced me. But as it relates to political thought, it certainly is Thomas Paine. What we owe him is a debt that can never be repaid, because an anarchist will say, oh, but he wasn't an anarchist. You're right. He was not. It was also 200 fucking years ago. And thinking, hey, we don't need a king. It was a new idea.
Pretty revolutionary. Yeah.
Right. But
yeah, that's one of the things that always frustrates me is people want to try to put like historical figures in some sort of like modern understanding of all of the history that we have that is actually like in a lot of ways influenced by those very people. And so it's basically like saying, Einstein's an idiot because he didn't know all the shit that we know about computers now. I'm like, wait, what? Like how are you gonna say that? Like the dude is part of the reason why we have a lot of the shit that we have now. You know what I mean? Like what are you talking about?
And I think a lot of it is because so many of us, I'm talking about anarchists in particular, we like to think we know it all. And and we also like to think that we're all pure. Well, I got news for you. If you're looking for purity, you're going to wind up with the Borg, so stop doing that shit. Stop. No one is perfect. We do not know all the answers, and stop doing that. And those are the kinds of arguments that Thomas Paine made. Those are the things that he said. People have talked about him coming from a leftist point of view. And there's some truth to that. There is some real truth to the fact that Thomas Paine looked at ideas that today we might call socialist. But he was talking about in your community. He wasn't talking about this global organization that's going to come down and put the boot right on your throat.
Right.
He wasn't talking about that. He's talking about in your community, y'all should help each other out. And, so for me, coming from an interesting background, Thomas Paine became my inspiration. And then when I found deism, and particularly his form of deism, that he talks about in The Age of Reason, where he says, I believe in one God, and then goes on to say, but I don't know shit about him. I believe in him. It's up there somewhere. I got it.
Yeah.
But I don't know shit that he's doing. And these are these people.
There's a genuine, like, innocent honesty in that, right?
Yeah.
That is like, hey, look, man, there's something, but damned if I know, like, more than fuck all about it. Like it's a lot of it is kind of like a journey, an exploration to discover. So
yeah, and go ahead, Nico.
No, I was just gonna say that it's kind of funny how we like expect people to know like the form or the culmination of what God is.
Right.
And it's like, no, you're supposed to know it because he's always around you. He's a presence and there's a heat. I'm like, wait, well, stop putting all these things as if you know it. There's a true innocence and a childlike perspective you have to come with when it comes to like dealing with God and perceiving what is God. Because everybody, like we said, thinks they're a know-it-all. And it's not just that, the anarch community, it's absolutely everywhere. Everybody thinks that they know the whole situation. In all actuality, it's like, we don't know shit because every day you learn something new and you feel like you're stupider every second. So.
For sure. And, and I think that, had, frankly, what happened with Paine in Age of Reason, if anybody has read it, it like stops about in the middle. There's two sections of the book. And long story short, he went over to France as an emissary of the United States and was thrown into prison by the King of France. And of course, him being friends with George Washington and this whole growing up of the United States at the time, because this is after the war. And, he's begging Washington to let him go, and Washington's like, I can't do that because we have connections to, the French government, and if we piss them off, then we can't do this. Well, part of that also was the Catholic Church just going after Paine like crazy because he was a deist. And so if they hadn't done all that, if he had just stayed at home, the first section of the Age of Reason would have just been, yeah, God's kind of cool. and I don't believe in a bunch of dumb shit is really all it would have said. What happened was, while he's in prison getting pissed at everybody, he went, okay, you want to come after me? All right. So they didn't let him have anything but a Bible. That's the only thing he had. So he took the Bible and tore it to shreds, line by line. He absolutely just went after, okay, that can't possibly have happened because this timeline doesn't match here and this timeline doesn't match here. And this line is from here, and tears it to pieces because they had attacked him. They had imprisoned him, and he was like, fuck y'all. So I really like, I've not finished. I'm trying to read like 3 books right now, but I started a book on Paine recently, where it actually comes from more of a left-wing perspective. But one of the things that they talked about was that one thing that Paine was, if he was anything, was a revolutionary. He was about changing things for the better. And I think that is really the biggest and most important part of who he was that I try to embody. I want to help the world become a better place.
Big facts.
So there's Paine. Does anybody else want to talk about?
Well, I wanted to give Nico an opportunity to pick your brain on it, but I have a couple of things I wanted to ask you too once he has that opportunity.
I'm sorry.
If you got anything.
I had gotten a phone call from my padre and was trying to discuss that and let him know I'm busy. But
cool.
I'll let you go first. I have to deal with him so he don't barge in on me. I'm sorry.
Fair enough. No, so one of the things that was interesting too, though, is like, so Paine goes over to France, but he's involved in like the French Revolution and everything too, and kind of sees like, whoa, wait a second, maybe this is. Well, tell the folks a little bit about what he discovered about their approach versus what became the American approach.
Well, Paine found that the French were not going to be all that free. Is really where it was, because they were pissed. As much as in the United States, obviously, people didn't, in particularly Massachusetts, we think of them as being this leftist, snowflake land. But back in the day, Massachusetts is where all the badasses were. Between there and like New Hampshire and Vermont, that's where all the badasses were. And but he expected a reasoned approach that would be more focused on the individual. And in France, he didn't find that. And and he was looking at things like, I'm also quite influenced by Voltaire, and he saw Voltaire and was expecting that kind of revolution, and he got something a little closer to Rousseau, and Rousseau believed in a collective identity. And so my understanding with Paine is the reason he was thrown into prison is because he was siding with the revolutionaries against the French monarchy.
Yeah,
right. So does that hit on what you were talking about, or is there something?
Well, just how like their shit ended in like guillotining people, and it was like really, really bloody, and ended up actually like hitting like regular people who just got caught up in the, oh, looks like you might be rich, off with your head too, motherfucker. And there was some stuff that was just like, wait a second, like, well, who's the enemy again? Who are we fighting against? And what are we trying to do? And what are we trying to push back against? It kind of got, as is often the case, it got sort of chaotic because you had just anger and frustration, emotions involved, and it was less of a less of a vision it was just like, let's fuck some people up because we're mad. And then the aftermath always leaves you with something that maybe it wasn't worse than what they were dealing with before, but it wasn't like the panacea that they thought it was going to be.
No, and that's absolutely true. And you can see that in the early days of the part of Paris was actually cordoned off, and they established what might have been the first socialist government had it taken real true hold. Because again, you're right though, but I think that to a degree, if anybody has read Mark Twain, a Kentucky, what is it? I don't remember anyway, in King Arthur's court, Connecticut Yankee and King Arthur's court. Yeah. That's what it was. In that he's actually
Kentucky. I was like, what?
Right. It was Connecticut, but he talked about how, the different, now he's talking about Britain, and he actually makes some comparisons. Long story short, one of the things that he said is the anger that existed in Europe at that time against the monarchies. We're not talking about a couple generations of being pissed off like you are in the United States, what becomes the United States. You're talking about, thousands of years of being pissed off because you've been trampled on by tyrants. So the anger that built up was much and denied it. Frankly, it was not all about that. Wanted, his vision was more about, letting, the thoughts of freedom and the ideas of reason spread across the world so that we could get rid of all of these controlling factors, whether they came from religion or politics. And that really, I guess failed in that to a degree on the direct course. I would argue that that's exactly what Europe needed. And the reason I would argue that is because the monarchs all over Europe, when France fell, went, oh shit, we got a population that could do that to us. And without France falling down in that way, had it been a more peaceful transition, you might have had, places like Italy or what would eventually be Germany, the Austro-Hungary kind of area. They might have strengthened their power, and instead they got the shit scared out of them and said, well, maybe we need to start backing off and start some reforms, and so that we don't wind up like France. And so I think that it actually may have been more advantageous, but it isn't what Paine had envisioned, nor Jefferson for that matter. When you compare the two of them, it's really interesting because Jefferson and Paine have very similar ideas, but totally different ways of presenting the ideas. Jefferson is a lawyer. His writings are very boring, but Paine, on the other hand, Jefferson writes a really good speech though. But
Paine was like Antifa or something,
right?
Like,
yeah, for sure. Like just tearing shit to shreds. Right, exactly. For his time, that is exactly what he was doing.
Yeah.
So I think that Paine really kind of is the I guess what I like to model my activism on, and what I like to model who I am when it comes to the political space more.
Yeah, let me clarify for all the viewers who might be angry that I lumped Thomas Paine in with Antifa. He was more like what Antifa thinks they are.
Right. Sure.
That's probably a better representation of it, because a lot of what they end up doing is like policing free speech and being like actually fascist in a lot of their own activities and shit that they're pushing for. Nico, do you have anything from Mr. Marcus on Thomas Paine?
I'm super sorry, guys. I have to go take care of my grandmother real quick.
Oh, shoot,
okay,
man.
No,
come back in when you can.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry.
Hope everything's all right.
Yeah, she's straight. She should be. I'll be right back.
All right, bro.
Right on.
We got you.
So, Chad, I thought that what we could do is, since we kind of covered Thomas Paine, which is one of mine, why don't you, and I don't care if
the Bastiat?
Yeah, either Bastiat or the
well, no, I think let's stick with Bastiat, because I think because the other one is more of a spiritual type of
Sure.
ancestor, I guess, so to speak, even though he's still alive, and he's
Mhm.
not, but like thought ancestor, I guess. So when I look at, like, Bastiat is one of the people who, it's funny. I have to kind of tell this little story about how I came across Frederick Bastiat. So if you go back, you and I have a very similar path to where we are right now.
Yeah.
Where I've talked about this before, that I have, voted for Clinton in 92, didn't vote in 94, 96, 98, 2000. And then 9/11 happens. And so then I'm like, oh shit, like something's got to be done, blah, 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 whatever. Turned into like a neocon warmonger type. Voted in the 2002 midterms, voted, straight Republican. Voted for Bush in 04. Shame on me. I know, whatever. You want to flog me to death? Fine, whatever. But anyway, so as I'm going through that process, I'm like, I was a huge, like, I subscribed to Rush Limbaugh. Like I was all in. Like it's, how this stuff happens, right? Where you like find something that's like, wait, this person recognizes that something's amiss.
Right.
And he is talking about the thing that's amiss. And this is kind of, you're seeing some of this now. We were talking about this before with like DeSantis and some of this other stuff. You have to be really, really careful that you're not just doing the enemy of my enemy is my friend thing, where you see, okay, and now this is not to say that being allies with people to fight against something that's oppressive or tyrannical is not a good thing. But what you have to do is you have to be careful not to get sucked down into a wormhole with someone's ideology. That you have to get to like your own fundamentals and find your principles that are unwavering. Because what I found was that while Rush Limbaugh was dead on the money on a lot of stuff where he called out the left, he apologized for the right so much for a lot of the same stuff.
Yeah.
And was very big Patriot Act and all this stuff. All these things were good things. The war in Iraq, the war in Afghanistan, all this shit was like, gung ho, let's go get it. The only thing that was wrong was we weren't killing enough people fast enough. We weren't blowing enough shit up fast enough. We weren't being destructive enough, was his big push. But I didn't see, at the time, it was kind of a reaction out of the emotions of this situation, similar to like what we talked about with what Thomas Paine saw in France. So, you fast forward, and around like the 06 midterm era, somewhere in that range, somewhere in that time period between 04 and 06, I found Glenn Beck. So I find Glenn Beck. I'm listening to his show on Sirius XM. I think it was just XM back then at the time. And I became a subscriber of his. And then it was like, wait, screw that Rush Limbaugh subscription. I found the guy who actually is willing to call out the right for some stuff too, and who isn't, gung-ho on board with Mitt Romney and all this other kind of stuff. So like there were some of those little pieces too. Or no, it wasn't Mitt Romney. It was McCain at the time. And so you had some little nuggets that were leading you along the way. Well, through Glenn Beck, I find Andrew Wilkow. Andrew Wilkow, also on Sirius XM, he would come on right after, and he kept repeating these book titles over and over again: Bastiat's The Law and Economics in One Lesson by Henry Hazlitt. And those two books, mostly though, it was The Law by Bastiat, because like Economics in One Lesson is great, it's fine, but it's not the comprehensive, we don't need government manifesto that The Law is by Bastiat.
For sure.
And what really, really hit me in like my core and like made me open my eyes and say, holy shit, like A, I never thought about it that way. And B, like, I don't know how you unthink this way. Like, I don't know how you you extract yourself out and become a statist after you actually after this connection actually makes. Once those neuron connections are made, like, I don't know, they're gonna have to like brainwash me or some shit, like have lobotomize me or something to get it to where I don't think this way anymore. Because some of the stuff that he describes is how this concept, this idea that people have that like human beings are inherently flawed, and therefore they cannot rule themselves. And he says, so what are the rulers made of? Are they made of some special angelic material?
Right.
Or are they not also inherently flawed? And if they are, aren't we better off if a bunch of individually inherently flawed people only have control over themselves?
Correct.
And don't have control over other people, where they can ruin those other people's lives. So there was that. And then there was also, and this is one that's like, it's hard for people to hear. It's really hard for people to like wrap their minds around, but the idea of like voting and who should vote. And he talks about how, there was like, women couldn't vote and people who didn't own land couldn't vote and all this other stuff. And people think that like we have like this universal suffrage right now. He's like, oh, really? Can a 18-month-old vote? Right. Well, that's ridiculous. Why is it ridiculous? So what we're saying is that the reason a 4-year-old can't vote is because all the people who are older than 4 years old have told him he can't vote.
Yeah.
It's essentially what it is. It's like the men said women can't vote, and we voted, and fuck you, you don't get to vote. That's basically what they say. And when you get into those kinds of things, it's like, oh shit, man, like, where are your principles? Where are your fundamentals? Mm-hmm. Because if your fundamentals are certain people should be able to vote, you better have a damn good reason for why that's the case. And it all comes back to, as you start to like peel the layers away of this onion, you start to realize like at the heart of all this is each individual should be responsible for governing themselves.
Yeah.
And taking care of themselves and protecting themselves. And yes, we can voluntarily come together within communities to help each other and to ally with each other, but it can't be coercive. It can't be forced. You can't say, hey, Marcus, Nico, from now on, this is what we're doing. Y'all have to send me $50 every month, and I'm going to spend it on this. And if you don't do it, I'm going to come to your house and shoot you. Like, that's fucking retarded. Like,
right.
So anyway, that's where, Bastiat started me down that path. And then, you go Bastiat, then, you're not far from Rothbard.
Correct.
I get into like some de Tocqueville and some other things where you start to see where people were. And the other thing I love about Bastiat is that he's writing the law in the middle of all this shit that we're talking about.
Right.
With Thomas Paine, like maybe a little bit later, but it's
still repercussions.
It's in like the 1850s. He's seeing what came out of all that stuff, and he's dying of tuberculosis while he's doing it. Like he's going through all this shit at the same time, and he's a brilliant writer, but he's speaking from France as someone who is seeing the fuckery that is that whole outgrowth of the French Revolution.
Right. Yeah, and what I like about Bastiat myself is he kind of reminds me of like the Vulcans of the of the freedom. Yeah. Yes. Yeah, he very much is just like, you can hear, like, you can even put pointy ears on Bastiat.
Right.
The picture that you see of him.
Oh, for sure.
But yeah, very logical. There are certain ways that people can be convincing, and Bastiat's way was very much like Spock's. It was about, this is the logical way, Jim.
Mm-hmm.
It is logical that of course large groups of people who are flawed will eventually come to,
right.
Very, very measured,
And I've listened, so I've read it a couple of times, and then I've listened to it several times because I drive so much. Mm-hmm. It doesn't hurt to like just kind of get the little refresher. But Jeff Riggenbach reads it, and he's got this like really thundering, like deep voice and everything. But just hearing the words that Bastiat says, I'm like, I don't know. Like, I tend to think this is more like masterpiece theater type, cadence and tone that he's probably speaking, that he would speak with if he were actually reading it himself. But it's really, it's an amazing work. Like, to me, the two books, if I only have two, it's The Law by Bastiat and Anatomy of the State by Rothbard. If I have three, it's those two and Freedom by Adam. Because I think freedom is less fundamental, and more like where we are right now and how to kind of
Sure.
it's a solution for the current time and how to get to freedom as painlessly as possible. Whereas the other two are the reason why. Uh-oh, what happened to Nico? Damn, we keep losing Nico. So that's why those are my two my top two books that I recommend to people. The other reason is all three of those are super short. I think the Anatomy of the State will take you about an hour, maybe an hour and a half to read. The Law is like maybe a 2 to 3 hour read, and Freedom is 3, maybe 4.
Yeah.
So like if you have a day, if you you have
Right.
a calm Sunday afternoon, interrupt your reading to watch this show. But for the most part, you can knock those books out. What did he say?
Good audiobooks.
Oh, his internet went out. Damn.
Oh.
No. Nico just said his internet went out.
Oh, crap.
All right. Well, hopefully he'll be back. We apologize. We got some little technical difficulties. It's the first time we do this on Sunday as the regular show, so of course we're going to have some hiccups. But he's working on it. We'll get Nico back as soon as we can. But I know like The Law and Anatomy of the State are favorites of yours as well. But
they are. I want to kind of hit the Sketch was talking about good audiobooks. I think all of those.
YouTube.
You listen to on YouTube. Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's what I was going to say.
All three of them,
right, for sure. And for me, Bastiat's up there too. I enjoy his writing. For me, I would say that it's more about temperament than it is actually content. I actually like Lysander Spooner a little bit better than Bastiat.
Yeah.
And both of them are similar in many ways, but with Spooner, he bites so damn.
I was going to
hard.
say it's more derisive, like he's just like, listen, bitches,
right?
This is why your shit is stupid, that sort of thing. Whereas Bastiat is more like, are you certain that is the proper way to look at this situation, or so? You know what I mean? Where it's like,
right?
Like he's much more polite.
Yeah, to use the analogy I used earlier, I think Bastiat is Vulcan, and I would say that
Spooner is Captain Kirk.
Yeah, that Spooner is more. No, I would say Spooner's more of a Klingon.
Oh, okay.
He's going in there, both guns blazing, and just tearing the status hearts out.
Okay.
Okay. And I think maybe the Federation or whatever, the humans might be Rothbard, but kind of more of a balance between the two.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I can get into Bastiat, and what I particularly, I guess, have been influenced by him really is he does kind of come into this understand. My wife and I were talking today, I think it was either today or yesterday, about the one thing as anarchists that we need to do if we're going to get the world to realize our position and come to around to more than 50% of the world being like us. All right.
Mm-hmm.
There's only one statement we have to do. We have to change the mindset. And that mindset is that that the state, the government itself is equal, is exactly the same as a criminal gang.
The mafia.
They aren't caring about shit. Yeah, they are nothing.
I would even argue the mafia cares more
are.
About shit. The mafia cares more about shit.
I would too.
They want to protect their neighborhood, their family, that sort of thing. But
right.
The government is just they're strictly concerned with continuing to enrich themselves and their friends at everyone else's expense. And whereas at least the mafia, they'll have family fights where it's about like, hey, you did something to my brother,
you pissed on my daughter,
like that. And some shit like that. So shout out to Rob Kaiser, shout out to Sketch Therapy, Daryl. I see all y'all out
absolutely
here in the chat.
Good comments in the chat.
He changed his name to Daryl the Agorist Prepper. I love it. Oh shit. Shout out to Clockwork.
Yeah. That's awesome.
Shout out to Cassius Cam. I saw you in there too. Everybody in the chat. Appreciate y'all coming out.
Absolutely. And all fantastic people. Glad to have them on board. so I want to finish that thought with and connect it to Bastiat. What I particularly like from Bastiat is his way that he shows, because the crime that is easiest to show is taxation and theft. That's the easiest thing to get people to start thinking about government as a criminal, because there really isn't any other way that like you can, my wife and I were talking about that, you can look at that war is murder, and that's awful, and war is awful, but there are governments that don't really commit war. They don't, we don't like Venezuela that much, but they didn't go attacking their neighbors, so
Right.
So it's easier to show that taxation is theft, because it's not like they're taking your money and then, lining the streets with gold. They're taking your money and they're putting it largely in their pocket. And Bastiat is the way.
I think I'm the only one not in the Matrix.
That
Marcus, your internet connection is glitching on you. Let me tell y'all what Marcus was trying to say. Marcus was trying to say,
as long as people.
Damn. Now Marcus is gone. All right, it's all me now. Hi, everybody. I'm going to try to get into what. Oh wait, is Marcus back? No, I can't hear you.
Am I back?
Yeah, there you go. All right.
Am I back?
Yeah, finish your thought, bro.
Hello.
Okay.
Okay. So anyway, I was just saying that I think that Bastiat shows. I can hear you.
All right, go.
Can you hear me now, Chad?
Yeah, just go. Just say your thing. Finish it
I'm
off.
done.
Oh, all right.
So are we back?
God damn. Yes. I never left.
I know.
But yeah, you're back. You're back.
Okay.
I think we're back in time. I think there was a huge delay, and so like I was saying something, and you would finish talking, and then you would answer what I said like 10 seconds later or something like that. So it's all good. The chat is getting lively. Shout out to all the people in the group. Yeah. So it's we're waiting for Nico to come back so we can get into his. Let's go into our second freedom ancestor. I'll let you go first, and then I'll come in with my Peter Kraft.
Okay. Well,
so go ahead.
I actually am going to go with my spiritual stuff, and I guess it's good to maybe start with a little bit. Might scare some folks, and then wrap it up with a Christian.
Okay.
But the biggest influence on my philosophy outside of political philosophy is certainly Aleister Crowley. And people will, he was the beast 666 and all this craziness, and he was scary, and you'll hear all kinds of craziness about him. Okay. The dude had some good ideas, and you can think that he's the devil. You can think all that crap. I don't care. What he talked about was individual spirituality. We like to talk about individual liberty and what is more important than a person's spirituality. They're linked to God, and they're linked to their family, and those sorts of connections are very important. And so Crowley envisioned a world that ruled itself, and did it in such a way that each of us found our own way to God. And he didn't believe that there were 1 or 10 different ways. He believed that however many people there were on the world, they had a particular path. He called it their will, and you were here to do something, and whatever that it's He's talking about Aleister, Bob Kaiser. The warning, you're going to get B666 and all this other stuff, but it is, I believe it's Aleister,
Yeah.
Crowley. You'll find it.
Aleister. Yeah.
Yeah. And I always reverse the I and the E. So anyway, but he challenged all conventions. When it came to politics, really, he was more of a monarchist. Really, he believed that in a divine right of kings. He believed that energies of the universe put people in power, and all of this craziness. And I don't agree with almost any
Dumbass. Oh, sorry.
Right. Yeah, right. Yeah. John Locke would have destroyed Aleister Crowley. Just destroyed him when it came to that particular.
To that part, yeah.
Yeah,
for the divine right of kings and all this. Yeah.
Right.
There's a lot of that. There's a lot of that even within like Catholic circles where there's this there's a few passages that always get we always get reminded of. There's the one about giving to Caesar what is Caesar's and all this other stuff, which is a complete misinterpretation of what they were trying to trap Jesus into and what he used as his way to basically flip it on them and flip the script on them. The other one is, I think it's Romans. I can't remember which. It's like Romans 28, maybe. I can't remember. Anyway, but it's one about like obedience to authority, but it comes from the standpoint of like just authority, like just benevolent, like me and my kids. Like hey, look, I'm telling you this because I love you and I'm I want what's best for you. So this is what you need to do to do that and to stay in good standing so that you'll keep getting the benefits of being one of my kids who, isn't in trouble for like doing some stupid shit to your brother or whatever, that kind of stuff. Like there's a difference between that and, they said we have to get the stabby stab. So got to go get it. Like, no, that's not what that's about. Like, anyway, go ahead. Finish your thought.
No, all of that is very, very akin to what Crowley kind of started me thinking about myself. Because with all of the I guess bit of statism, and it was more than a bit. It was, Crowley was a statist, but in the midst of that, he was also a rebel, and he encouraged people to think outside of the box and to overthrow governments that don't suit them. Sound familiar? And he certainly was influenced by a lot of deists, including Jefferson and several others. But what really got me going in that direction wasn't so much everything that he said. It was the spirit of what he said. And I'm actually massively influenced by a particular book called it's Liber 418, or The Vision and the Voice, which is Crowley's experience with an angelic set of angels called Enochian. And massively impacted me. It massively impacted Crowley. And all of the ideas presented in that transformation, and to be clear, Crowley literally was fucking this dude because he's gay as hell. Crowley's bi, he's trisexual. He'll do it with just about anything that will let him.
He'll try anything.
Right, absolutely. And so he was screwing this dude across the desert, and every day this guy's job. Right. Crowley's a fun dude.
I don't know if you mean he went across the desert to screw this guy, or if you meant he like is screwing him across the desert.
He's screwing him across the desert, like literally. Like he like their daily events. Right. All kinds of pause. I'm telling you right now. So because Crowley is like, literally like day's events. We're gonna have sex. Then we're going to call up an angel, and then we're going to have sex again.
This is Marcus's friends, y'all. I just want y'all to know, like, this is who this man decided to bring up on the stage to say his ancestor.
Right. But in these deep thoughts that Crowley got into in those particular moments, and also with another book that was a massive impact on Crowley called The Book of the Law that he, long story short, got in Egypt. It was transmitted via particular spirits and blah, blah, blah. Anyway, the idea was that human evolution was leading us closer to the individual, was leading us closer to a individual relationship with God, an individual relationship with each other, and an individual relationship with everything in the cosmos. That all relation between people should be one-on-one, voluntarily. And those ideas, though Crowley himself wouldn't have bought all that, any of that, he fought like crazy. He took, when he got the Book of the Law, which is really where that started, he took that book and literally put it in a room and left it. He did not want anything to do with it because it violated so many of his belief systems. But he got it in a extraordinary way, because he got it from a spirit that spoke to him directly. And so those ideas that I was embroiled in for years impacted me massively, and really led my philosophy to start looking into ideas that kind of worked in that framework, because it made sense to me. It made sense to me that you put the oxygen mask on yourself first. That made sense to me. And because Crowley didn't teach that, you couldn't work together. He just believed that each person in any particular instance is working their way, and we might be able to come together, and I have my way, you have your way, and some other person, Nico has his way, and somebody other person like Daryl has his way, and we work together where we find commonality. So you can see, me real.
Yeah. No, it fits with how you have evolved. Yeah. And me too. Like, and so it's funny too that you bring that up, that you have like, he's one of yours. And then like, I went through, so it was like Rush Limbaugh and Glenn Beck and all those people who I'm not terribly proud that, that they were a big influence on me. But what it is it's these are the breadcrumbs that lead you down the path to where you end up. And it's not necessarily to say that like, oh yeah, I believe 100% of what that person believes in or anything like that. It's just what we're trying to give, just the same way that we do with our family members, our grandparents, our great-grandparents, great-great-grandparents, is, like one of them might have beaten his wife, but he's also like the reason my eyes are the color that they are, or whatever the case may be. I'm not going to gouge my eyes out just because of that. Like, I'm just going to say, all right, no, like part of why I'm here and what led me to where I am is coming from these folks. So,
sure.
So no, that's good. I appreciate that.
Yeah. And to be clear to anyone else, that when you look into Crowley, he's an asshole. He's not a good dude. This is not a good person. But there is no one, in my opinion, who has been more spiritually innovative since Jesus. Like, I don't know anybody that has been as spiritually innovative since Jesus. There are some people that were innovative. Muhammad, it was innovative. And, you can look at, Sri Ramakrishna, who was an innovative Hindu philosopher. There's been some people, not as much as Aleister Crowley. And he also used himself as the guinea pig for all the shit he believed in. He's out there trying, okay, I want to call a demon and see what they'll be like. So
this motherfucker, look what Daryl said.
No, do not drop the breadcrumbs in the desert with Crowley, dude. No, bad idea.
Shit. We had the best audience. We had the best friends. I swear to God, man. I hate you, Daryl, but that was awesome.
You got to understand, though, this dude, the guy I feel sorry for that he's fucking across the desert. Oh my God, his name is, I think, Fuller, and he was like a famous like military guy from Britain too. So this is like some
Buckminster Fuller.
No.
Okay.
No. But anyway, I think that was his name. Anyway, it's been a while since I read it, but
it's the only British Fuller that I know of. But anyway,
but yeah, this dude, his job is to write down all this crazy shit that the Crowley, because he's in like this little protected circle, and Crowley's wandering off in the desert, and literally, in one of the instances, a demon like tosses his ass across the desert. So you can imagine being this dude sitting in a circle, writing shit down, going, "Holy fuck, Jesus Christ, he just threw his ass across the desert." So you gotta feel bad for the guy that he was fucking across the desert, because Oh my God. You know, the life that he had to have led was probably a little entertaining.
Rob said Pudminster Fuller.
Right.
Bro,
Exactly.
yeah, this is like the most juvenile shit, but I'm here for it.
Oh,
I'm here
yeah,
for it all
for
day.
sure.
Daryl said you drop those crumbs and your ass is toast.
Sure.
Shit, man, y'all are too much.
Right.
All right, so while we wait for Nico to get his internet fixed and come back, hopefully, we'll let him, if he's here in time before we wrap up, we'll let him come in and drop his back to back.
Right.
But the other one that I wanted to bring up was a gentleman by the name of Peter Kreeft. He's a philosopher. He was a Calvinist who like converted to Catholicism, and he's got some of like the best I don't know, like I guess defenses of Christianity and even of Catholicism that I have ever seen. But more so than that, because while that's important, I think that's probably more important to some other folks who feel like defending their faith and like trying to convert people all the time is like a really, really important thing to do. And I'm not saying like that you shouldn't be sharing your vision of what, like, if you, I'm one of those people who believes that as long as you're being like kind and compassionate and out of a genuine, I don't know, seeking of like the betterment of the other person. Like for instance, if I had a diet that was doing really well for me and my health was just incredibly great and I was in great shape, I was doing all sorts of athletic shit and everything. I'm 50 years old. I'm not 50 yet. I'll be 48 in January, but like if I'm 50 years old and I'm like Jack LaLanne doing like, a million chin-ups and all this kind of shit and I'm in amazing shape, I would want to try to tell people how I did that,
Right.
Now, that's not to say that like whatever you're doing is terrible and is the worst thing and that mine is the only way.
Mhm.
But I would be like, trying to out of a desire for the good of the other person, trying to like, offer advice when I saw an opportunity, or if I was asked, I would want to be knowledgeable enough to be able to defend what I'm doing and to, sprinkle some knowledge on people. So I get that, but that's not what draws me to him. What draws me to him and what has really been important. So I got two of his books here. This one's kind of big. It's called the Handbook of Catholic Apologetics. It's real good. There's some really good stuff in here, just like from the beginning. Like I'll break it down for you, like the in the table of contents. So it starts off with the nature, power, and limitations of apologetics, faith and reason, and the very first part where it gets into the actual stuff is like God, and it's 20 arguments for the existence of God. And so, but it's all these like philosophical arguments and other like experiential arguments and things like that are just very well thought out. He's a brilliant philosopher. The one that I'm reading right now that's really good, that is one of the main reasons why I'm a big fan of his, is this one. It's called Ecumenical Jihad. And essentially what it's about is recognizing that we are in what amounts to like a holy war right now. Like there are like demons and evil forces at war with God, and good forces and our souls hang in the balance. And like our earthly like happiness and I don't know, like I don't want to say comfort. That's not but like just like survival and like not being fucking oppressed and being driven out of our minds and pushed into situations where like the stuff about like our souls kind of gets lost in the shuffle, and you end up like seeing some of the stuff like Yeonmi Park, where she's like talking about how, if there's somebody dying there, you like steal their shit because like they're about to die anyway, and you're going to starve to death if you don't get it. Like those kinds of situations. It's hard to judge another person when they're in that situation, but it's not hard to judge that the conditions are terrible and can lead to those types of conscience dilemmas, right? So recognizing that we're in what amounts to like a jihad of sorts, or not of sorts, but just in real. But then also recognizing what he talks about is like, it's very important to recognize who your enemy is and who your enemy isn't. There's three conditions. First, you have to recognize that there is a war, that you can't be like hanging, peace banners while bullets are flying, because you're going to get killed and you're going to lose. Second is who the enemy is and who the enemy is not, and who your allies are. And third, what the weapons are that you should be using. You don't fight fire with fire, you fight fire with water.
Right.
And you don't fight a beast that has diamond skin with some brittle weapons that aren't strong enough to do any damage to a diamond, and they're going to shatter instead. So making sure that you're approaching things in the right way. And so much of what he is talking about in this book is what we need to do and what we need to be ourselves. That it's not gonna happen at the ballot box. It's not gonna happen by trying to make some other people believe something that you think is the right way to do things. It's going to be making yourself the best version of yourself as possible, and not letting yourself get distracted and attached to things that keep you from pointing in the right direction.
Absolutely.
And so that's kind of where I am. And he's a tremendous influence. And what it was funny, we were talking earlier about like how little we know and all that kind of stuff. He wrote a book. It's called Everything You Wanted to Know About Heaven, but either were afraid to ask or never thought of asking, or something like that. And it came from a conversation he was having with his daughter, where his daughter was asking him all these questions. He's like, I don't know. And then she was like, well, such and such, their cat or whatever. He's like, will the cat be in heaven? He's like, if that's what you really, really want, and will really, really make you happy, then God will let you have your cat in heaven.
Yeah.
It's like, well, but what will the cat have cat food in heaven? And then he's like, well, if the cat needs to have the cat food to be happy and to make you happy, then yeah, I guess there'll be. Well, where will the cat food come from? Are there going to be factories in heaven? Because factories are ugly and they, pollute the air and all this other kind of stuff. He starts going in all these questions. He's like, all right, chill out now. She was like 7 or something like that when she's asking these questions. And so she's like, well, if you don't know, then how, what did she say? If you don't know, shouldn't there be a book about it or something like that? And he's like, yeah, there probably should. And she's like, well, why don't you write it? And he's like, so like out of, I don't know, she says, write a book about it. That was her. So he decided to write the book, but it was, with that being kind of the
in
backdrop
mind
for it. Yeah. And he had an uncle too that said, when he said he was right, he's like, I heard you're writing a book about heaven. He's like, yeah. He goes, so it's all full of lies then, right? And he goes, what do you mean? He's like, well, eye has not seen and ear has not heard what God has ready for those who love him. So how are you possibly going to write a book? And it's like, well, that's why you got to read the book, because it's not me.
I'll have to check it out.
I know stuff about stuff. But anyway, he's a really, really kind of reminds me of like what we were talking about with Bastiat. It's very he's got a good sense of humor, but he is not a like Spooner or Payne, where it's this
teeth.
With teeth. It's more with he kind of he's more like Gandalf,
Nice.
like that sort of thing. And he's done a lot of stuff on like C.S. Lewis and Tolkien and
Cool.
a lot of the allegories there and everything. So anyway, he's just a great, like, brilliant philosopher. And I would assume, just from hearing him talk, I mean, you never know because you don't get to experience somebody day to day. But I would assume he's a great dude too. And he's written tons of books, like 80 something, 90 something books, some shit. I think he's probably like in his 90s at this point. But
interesting. I want to dive into those
awesome
three
dude.
things that you were talking about. But first, what I find funny is both of us, from the experiences we've had, very similar kind of idea. Crowley wrote a book called The Book of Lies, and he says that it's his most truthful book. And it is just the like musings of his mind written in kind of poetic ways. And because Crowley believed, kind of like what you were talking about, that God is unknowable. You can't know it. And any time you try to, you have to look at the filters that God comes to us through. First of all, you're talking about God. We cannot mentally even begin to fathom what the fuck God thinks about. So first of all, God's got to put whatever the hell he's thinking about that he's going to transmit to you into something that you can at least begin to understand. Right. So he's going to have to lessen that to start with. Second of all, you have a filter of your brain. You've had certain experiences that have led you in a particular way that teach you what this or that means. Black means this to you. For instance, in the Western culture, when we think about death, we think about the color black. In other countries, it can be either white or it can be red. So that symbol would mean something different to each person based on the culture that they're in. So God can't transmute that. So then you also have to take that message that God gave you and translate it, put it into words that you can write, and then write that down for a book. So all of those, and then the person reading it is also going through the filter of reading what you wrote, interpreting them for themselves, and then internalizing those unknowable ideas into what you have. So I found it interesting that both of our spiritual, more spiritual influence, believe that God could be it would be unknowable, and anything that they could possibly write down wouldn't be it. But they're going to do the best that they can. So I wanted to dive into the three things that you talked about. I think that the idea that we are in a spiritual war, and this is also a political thing as well. We are in the fight of our lives, literally right now, every day. And it isn't a battle to make sure that people aren't being killed by a particular medicine. It's not about, that you can't find, that we could get, that I can't say what that medicine is, or we might get our channel canceled. That's not it. It really is.
Everyone knows what the medicine is, though.
Sorry.
Right. That's awful, man. That's awful. So, oh, dude, that big bird. But no, seriously though, we are in a battle, and we're in a battle against evil, and you can see that. I don't believe that porn is a bad thing. I don't care if a bunch of adults want to get together and have an orgy, have at, do what you do. I don't care. That's on you, right?
What a Dutch.
Yeah. But kids need to be left the fuck out of that shit. And the fact that they had porn books at the Virginia school library, that's not a good sign.
I have my thoughts on what like porn actually does to like the ability of people to like develop true connections with each other. Because I really think like a lot of what people are and this maybe would be another topic for another day, but fuck it, let's get into it. We're Nico's not here, and so we got some time to fill. But so if you think of it from the standpoint of what pornography is trying to replace, it is trying to replace, like if you have a real good, like loving connection with your like soulmate, the need for that stuff is a lot less than if you are alone and desperate and like needing. Okay. The other thing is what it does, and one of our writers for Men of Order actually wrote an article on this. Another thing is, it actually has like some physical effects on you. Like it's when you expend yourself. Ejaculation is you lose some of your life force as a man. That's how, because what you are releasing is actually like capable of making a human being. And some of that leaves you, right? So that's why like you go look at like some of the Taoist different techniques and I don't know, protocols or whatever. They talk about like how old you are and like where your virility is and everything, and how often you should ejaculate anyway to maintain some of your own like I don't know, manpower, so to speak. But the other thing is I think like what we have seen is if you look at where society has gone, where we have disconnected. It's a very Brave New World type of decision that we have before us. One path leads us down this disconnection of sex from love, from procreation, and brings it more into pure enjoyment and gratification and a certain level of satisfaction. But look, as someone who has I have been a young teenage boy and everything, there's a certain level of dissatisfaction that you're left with.
Right.
It's not necessarily like the panacea that it is when you're with, like I'm sure like you experience with Amber, that I experienced with my wife.
Mm-hmm.
It's a whole different level than it is, me by myself with some visual entertainment. So you have that path, the Aldous Huxley Brave New World type of path, and then on the other path you have the and like all the death and destruction that we've seen as that has grown out, versus a path that I think leads to people finding more genuine connection with each other. And this is not to say like I want to beat people over the head or like lock them in cages or anything like that. I'm just saying like optimally, you're better off if you find like a real meaningful connection with someone and can share that in the proper context. That's all.
Sure. And largely I agree. Where I find a difference is I do think that intent matters. And though personally, I think that adult porn, I get what you're saying, Chad.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, to a large degree, I agree. But there are ways that doesn't have to be the case. Tantric masters have been talking about this for the time immemorial.
Retention and everything. Yeah.
Correct. And so I do think that there is room for a left-hand masturbator, and I'm not talking about sitting on your right arm until it goes to sleep and use the other one so it feels like it's somebody different. But I'm not talking about that. But I am talking about the fundamental embracing of the love of life can be found in a masturbatory way. I think that that's real, but just knocking a couple off in the shower because you need to relax for a second, that's not exactly the same thing. and I do think that becomes a problem. And but I do also think that that's just one symptom. For instance, I don't have a bit of problem if somebody is transgender or whatever. I don't care. Be yourself. Be who you are. I don't care. But to sit back and assume that the whole society should be based in this very small minority, and that should be the controlling interest. I buy that there are people who don't really fit the regular gender roles. I get that. That makes sense to me. There's going to be some people that are a little bit out of the norm. That's the way everything is. But you don't make somebody, identify with one of those things without fucking them up, because that is not the norm. And it isn't that it's bad. It's that to live in a comfortable life, most people are going to be heterosexual male or heterosexual female, or the second set of more common homosexual.
Yeah, right.
You're going to be one of those four at the, but all of them end in male or female. And that's the vast majority of people. And to make people who are, generally one of those four have to accept the rules for a small minority of people that don't fit the rules are there on purpose because they're the norm. And I'm not saying that we should always keep the norm. That's not what I'm trying to say. I'm saying, but forcing people to accept something that is already outside of the norm will throw them off balance. It will make them not appreciate themselves. You're going to create self-hate. You're going to create an intellectual understanding that isn't true to their nature. And that's the kind of war that we're in. We're in a war that the state is trying to dictate how you believe about your life in any particular way. And that's what we're fighting.
Did you have a chance to watch? Did you get to see the Chappelle Netflix special? The most
I
recent
saw
one,
part
The
of
Closer?
it. We watched.
So when he goes in and he's talking about how the friend of his that was a comedian who ended up committing suicide, Daphne Daphne Dorman, I think is her name. He tells a story about this night that he's doing, like she opened for him, she bombed, and then after that she she had like the room was on fire for her while he was on stage because she was cutting up and all this kind of stuff, and then at some point it kind of turned, and he said something about, I just don't understand, something like that, and he said her face turned and it looked like she was mad at him, she was looking at him like they weren't friends anymore or something like that. But he said, she just said, I don't need you to understand. I just need you to know that I'm a person and I'm going through and I'm having like a human experience.
Right.
And I can respect that. He was like, okay, I get it. Like, yeah, like we all go through some shit, and let's just recognize that we go through some shit. And so we can have that level of like empathy and compassion for people, and not necessarily have we don't have to wrap every like discussion in pronouns and all this other weird nonsense that like is just like it's very forced and it's very
unnatural.
It's just unnecessary. Like I don't like, okay, look, if I say ma'am and that's not like how you rock, let me know and we'll be cool after that. But don't fucking hate me because I didn't know to, like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it's just like some of this stuff is to the point where it's almost like it's specifically set up just to play gotcha and to like find a reason to be angry at people because there's something else going on interiorly.
Right.
And like, I don't have a hateful bone in my body for anybody except maybe some of these motherfuckers trying to push the shit on the kids. The shit that we saw with Elmo and fucking Rosita and Big Bird and everything this weekend, trying to tell people to go get some shit injected into them. That shit,
war on your kids.
There might be a borderline hateful bone in my body for those people.
For sure.
But like, no, like we know people in the LP who are transgendered.
Had somebody at my house last weekend.
Yeah, and like I know there's some really good people. I can rock with them and like ally with them on the issues that we're fighting for and all that kind of stuff. And it doesn't have to be anything beyond that. And I think that for the most part, what I have measured is that in the interactions that I have, if I fuck up and like don't know whatever, like there's no animosity there.
Right.
What I have a problem with is the people who just are looking for a reason to have animosity, and they just want to assume. It's kind of like the stuff that we encounter with the politics stuff, where I say something like, "I'm not a big fan of Joe Biden," and some Democrat just assumes that means that I'm a Trumper and that I'm a greasy old Republican who loves to, I don't know, bomb shit, even though the Democrats do that too. Let's not let that get in the way of their argument.
Sure.
Or whatever else, that I'm a racist and all this other kind of bullshit. And I'm like, no, you don't know. You have no idea what you're talking about. And so like, I get it. Like I get partied all the time. You know what I mean? I don't get pissed off about it and like go try to have them lose their job.
Right.
So I know it's not the same thing, but
that's a good analogy.
Let's be real. Like there's some people where it's like really obvious that it fits into like what we have known for the entirety of human history as man and woman, right?
Right.
And then there are other people where it's not quite so clear. That doesn't mean that like it's that we're casting judgment that on one or the other or anything like that. But I would pray that you wouldn't cast judgment on me for not nailing it right on the head, right out of the gate, or knowing that I should ask you what pronoun before I address you. Like,
how am I supposed to know that?
Say hi. How's it going?
You look like a Charlie.
If I pull up, I don't know, if I'm at a store or something like that, I'm like, and they're like, oh, do you want paper or plastic? Oh, no bag, ma'am. Why did you say ma'am? Like, oh god damn, like that you know what I'm saying? Like that kind of shit. I'm like, I don't get it. I don't understand where the anger and resentment comes from.
Because
I know there's some people who've been mean, but whatever. Anyway, we went off on a long tangent. You had that was like one of the three things,
right? I want to dive a little bit more into the war, and I really do think that there are just good people and there are just bad people, and we're not talking about like in particular having a faith at all, Paul. And there, can you hear me? Because my screen fucked up.
Yeah, it was glitching a little bit over here. I hear you though. Go ahead.
Okay, so can you hear me better now?
Yeah, it's fine now.
Okay, so good people are good people, bad people are bad people, and I really don't care beyond that, to be blunt. And bad people do things like steal from folks and murder kids and force you to do shit that you don't want to do. That's what the bad people do, and the good people say, hey man, hit this is pretty cool. The good people are like, here, have a beer. Or the good people are like, here, have a hamburger. Or, hey man, go sit over there, it's really cool. That's the good people. And the bad people are more concerned about dumb shit like making people say your goddamn pronouns than they are about trying to help people that are starving or trying to help and build a community. So that's what we're fighting. We're fighting people that really do embrace evil. You can't put it any other way. When they're doing shit like the Sesame Street nonsense that they're doing, when they're doing that shit, when they're coming directly at our kids, when they put fluoride in the kids' water, which they do. If you go look at Pedialyte, got fluoride like a motherfucker added. When they're doing that shit, when they are absolutely targeting children, that they're fucking evil.
Yeah, and to be clear, this is just the first or the most recent manifestation of the propaganda that has come out of Sesame Street. It's been rampant for decades. But anyway, go ahead, continue.
Well, it's public radio. This is public funded,
right?
So, but still, or public TV, I guess. But yeah, and so we are dealing with a warfare with people who are absolutely heinous asses, who are not going to give up until they have whatever their goals are, until that's accomplished, and they're going to step on and murder as many people as they can while they try to get there. And at the same time, we have to use these tools: compassion, love, and understanding. We have to use those tools. And you might say, well, then we're going to lose. No, we're not. Because nobody goes and hangs out with the guy that's murdering folks. I don't care who they are. Unless they're murderers, they're not going to go hang out with that person. But you got somebody that's very loving, compassionate, and tries everything they can to help you. You might go hang out with them. And so we do win. One of our spiritual ancestors, Milton Friedman, who based a lot of his his philosophies off of Adam Smith. Both of them made the argument, and very successfully made the argument, that we get to freedom and we get to morality and ethics by giving people choices. And they proved it over and over and over again. You can look at Wealth of Nations, and it is all in there. It's boring as shit, just to warn you. But in Wealth of Nations, he makes the case, and it's there, and you can see it in Milton Friedman. If my suggestion is you go watch the interviews he had with what the hell was it, Donahue, because those are amazing. He lays the case out.
Now that was the wild west of TV back then. Like you had like all these, you had Phil Donahue interviewing all kinds of people. You had like I don't know. That was back when they used to let like Malcolm X would be on TV.
Sure.
Then like Khalid Muhammad and Farrakhan and all these different people. Hell, you had like Ron Paul was on like Morton Downey Jr. in the middle of the night and shit like that. Like it was just like it was the golden era of
they didn't have control of that shit.
They didn't have control of it yet. And I do think that there's, to a certain extent, we're kind of in that age with like crypto where they don't have the control, but they're gonna find their way to try to seize that control eventually. But anyway, so finish your point, because I have something I wanted to read whenever you get
okay.
done.
I do at least want to briefly cover the other two steps, because we talked about
hit them.
The battle. And so the second portion was, remind me again, what was the second step? How did you put it?
So it was recognizing that you're at war is number one. Second is recognizing who the enemy is and who your allies are.
So we've kind of talked about
third is the weapons that you use.
So we've kind of talked about all those, and unfortunately, it sucks that people want to pull out an AR-15 and be like, this is how that's not gonna work. They know how to deal with that. John Lennon was absolutely right when he talked about that they understand violence. They don't understand humor and compassion. And so we're going to need to have humor and compassion, and I think that humor may be the most effective of all of the weapons that we have. And I think that that's one of the reasons that Dave Chappelle was effective both this time and the last time when he came out swinging. And I think that that's why they also try to lock that shit down as much as they can.
Yeah, no, for sure. I was gonna try to find it in the book, but I have a screenshot of it, so I'm just gonna use that.
Okay.
Cool. So because it fits in perfectly with what you were just talking about, with like how with the Lennon quote, basically. So he says, "There's this silly saying that the way to a man's heart is through his stomach. Satan has used sounder psychology. The way to a man's heart is through his hormones." And this kind of, in a way, this sort of goes back also to the point thing. But it also fits with the how they know to control you and how they have a difficult time controlling you. It says, he says, this was the philosophy echoed on the sign on Chuck Colson's desk when he was working for Nixon instead of for God. The quote on his desk said, "When you got them by their balls, their hearts and minds will follow." And so what he's talking about is like the kind of the philosophy was, and that's why we have to be really, really careful right now with how we navigate what we consume, what we're aligning ourselves with, what we're spending our time on, what we're spending our energy on. Because right now there's they're like weaponizing our virtue. They're weaponizing the fact that you want to just feed your family.
Yeah.
And they're trying to control you via that. They're weaponizing a lot of different things where they're causing rifts in families and in friendships and things like that too. This divide and conquer strategy is always very effective, but there's also the idea of leading you around by your emotions. And so you have to be really, really careful and like kind of step back and try to do the best you can to constantly. And I go back to our friend Augustus, who came on the last episode and talked about, what is truth, and using your discernment to like take in all this information that's going around and to actually trust your gut and listen to your intuition and that's why I think it's so important to find those first principles, that your foundation,
sure.
because when stuff doesn't resonate with your foundation, then one of two things has to happen. Either you have to rebuild part of your foundation to match this new information that you have that's like, oh, you know what? I had never thought of it this way. That's what I did. And I think you too, when we discovered liberty, like real liberty, through some of these ancestors that we've talked about, is you either realign your fundamentals to make your foundation more secure, more firm, and more withstanding, I guess, of the assaults that are going to come to it. Or you have to take that piece of information and recognize that it's bullshit because it doesn't fit that stuff. But where that discernment comes in is that's how, and you have to really, really be mindful of how you come about deciding whether you are going to upset the foundation or dismiss this information that doesn't fit the foundation, because you can't have this dissonant, vibration going on with your foundation. Your foundation. It has to either match or it's got to be discarded. And that's where your discernment comes in. You've got to really be attuned to that and be paying very, very close attention so that you're not being led around by emotions. And that's where that idea of having you by the balls and all that sort of stuff, and having, if you're too caught up in consuming entertainment and media and all this other kind of stuff, and even the Twitter feed can be that way. It can be really dangerous.
Yeah, and I think that this works for both the political stuff and also spiritual stuff. Aaron, my brother-in-law, and I had a conversation recently where I was talking about what's going on in the world right now and comparing it to Revelations as an example. How can you deny? Hello. It seems pretty goddamn obvious that some dude in a cave writing Revelations, he got some shit right. He had some shit going on. He figured that out, and he knew. And so for me, I have to go, okay. Now that doesn't mean that I buy the whole thing, but it does mean that I need to readjust and go, okay, Daniel, check. Revelations, check. I don't know about Leviticus. I haven't got no perfect thing. Or Genesis, those haven't been proven.
All right, so
Daniel, Revelations.
I'll drop something on you though. So we went through the other night on Clubhouse in the Preservation of the Human Race. They went through. There's like this. There's this CIA translation basically of Genesis where it breaks down all this stuff, and it's
interesting.
Essentially, it's like this. Try to put it in the best way. It is basically, the way that it's read in there is like this this description of the cyclical nature of the cataclysm, and then a flood or whatever, and then a rebirth, and then in 11 or 12,000 years, another cataclysm and a rebirth. And so it's like this, it's a really interesting perspective on things. But I wanted to, so back to that, on that idea of discernment and everything, I just want to kind of run this thing by you, because I came across this last night, and bro, on top of the Elmo thing, this just made my blood boil beyond belief. Wait, where the hell? Fact check 6. What the hell? Oh, okay, here it is. The NFL needs to. Oh, this isn't the fact check thing. Oh shit! Wait, there was an article. Okay, so I got to find. Oh, here it is. Here's the. Nope, that's not it. Here's the fact check article. I wonder if they went and revised it. Oh no, fact check 6 of Aaron Rodgers. Okay. Here it is. All right, so it says Rodgers' claim, the idea that it's a pandemic of the unstabbied is just a total lie. That's what he said. Okay. Right. This is the fact check. Unstabbied individuals are, in fact, bearing the brunt of the That's not a refutation, right? It's just nobody's even saying that that's not the case. It's just he's just saying that it's not exclusively
Right.
unstabbied people.
Right.
So your fact check is bullshit.
Right. Always.
Second, he says, if it's so great, how come people are still getting the thing and spreading the thing and dying of the thing? And they say, fact check. It's a public health tool that significantly reduces that's not a fact check. That's
right.
You're doing the same damn thing. Like,
right.
Jesus Christ. Anyway, so then the next one is the Iverson crossover horse medicine thing. He says people hate that just because Trump championed it, not just because Trump championed it, but because it's cheap and generic and you can't make any money off of it. So then the fact check says, Roger says he has been taking that stuff among other treatments. Experts have discouraged doing so. That's the fact check?
Right.
Like, are you
have you given up?
Like, bro, y'all are so terrible. Like, this is the worst fact checking article I've ever seen. Yeah. So this is the fourth claim. It says, if you've gotten it and recovered from it, that's the best boost to your system that you can have.
Sure.
Then they say it's unclear what he means by the best boost. But this claim is at best partly false. And then they go into like they don't know if it's better or not.
Right.
I'm like,
fact check.
Okay, no, you're terrible and stupid,
dude. I do want to.
I'm almost done. Hang on.
Okay.
So he says, to my knowledge, there's zero long-term. This is the worst one. Okay. There are zero long-term studies around sterility or fertility issues. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
The fact check is there's no scientific evidence to support his claims or his concerns. And then it says long-term studies on the issue haven't been possible. Like, yeah, motherfucker, that's what he said, you dumbass.
Right. You just said the same shit.
What the hell?
You just said the same shit.
And if your fact check doesn't say fact check true, then it's wrong. Like, your fact check is bullshit. Anyway, all right, so go ahead. You there's one more, but it's not as bad as that one. That was by far the worst one. And so I yield.
I'm telling you. The thing is, though, this is the shit they do.
Mm-hmm.
You know, one of the things I wanted to also bring up, one of the things that you know we should be doing is just looking with our fucking eyes.
Mm-hmm.
When this shit's out in front of you, hello, you know, I don't have any doubt that there is a new disease, because there's a new disease every fucking day.
Mm-hmm.
I have no doubt that there is something that could get me sick,
because they're introducing new toxins into our food and into our air supply and into our water supply and everything all the time. So yeah, naturally there's going to be responses to the toxins. Jesus.
Right. And you know, there's like 10,000 new flus every year.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so duh. But obviously, come on, you don't talk about like how they talked about this shit right out of the gate. You don't talk about it 2 years later, because the way they talked about it, we'd all be dead. You know, so you don't talk about it 2 years later. But one of the things that I have recently had the pleasure of looking over was actually one of my relatives. It's actually my wife's relative, but I'm going to claim him because he's awesome. but he is one of the leading Seventh-day Adventist ministers.
Oh, Mark. Is it Mark?
No,
Aaron.
This isn't. This is somebody you haven't met.
Oh,
but he's
Aaron's the one who, right? Isn't that his name?
Aaron? Yeah, Aaron's the one we interviewed.
Yeah.
Yes. But this guy's name is Ron Kelly. He's a leading minister in the one of many in the Seventh-day Adventist. I think his church is in Michigan. But he and a bunch of others came out and directly challenged the establishment of their religion, of their church, based on the church's reluctance to recognize bodily autonomy, and directly challenged them and used biblical references to do so. Yeah, and watch this whole long. I should look it up and send it to you because it's amazing. But there's one of the other gentlemen that's in this forum that they put together. he goes through and talks about specific, I think it was in Daniel specifically, that there was a medical, before the mark of the beast, there was going to be a medical force. And I remember the exact terminology. This isn't my holy book, but but there was supposed to be a medical one. And he made the argument, Ron and others, that now is the time to say no to the mark of the beast. This may not be the big shebang,
and that's the thing.
But say now
to what you were saying earlier about how it's not just about whether or not this is good medicine or not.
Right.
It's about what the approach tells you about what they have planned beyond this.
Right.
Once you give this up, you don't get it back.
Right. And that was the argument they made. So one of the things that is nice, and I actually want to move towards closing, and I want to bring up Rothbard to do so.
Pouring out for Nico's internet.
Right.
I'm not pouring water on myself.
And I don't remember the comedian's name off the top of my head because I didn't write it down. That was one of Nico's ancestors, but one of them was Malcolm X. And I tip one out for fucking Malcolm X because that dude had, I don't care if he wouldn't have liked me or not because I'm white. I don't give a fuck. That dude.
No, I think later on Malcolm X would have dug you.
Yeah. And so I want to say Malcolm X, what I like about him is that he wasn't just talking about some shit. He was willing to put his money where his mouth was, and was willing to fight for his people and his community, and that, and for freedom in general. And one of the in my opinion, this past century's greatest freedom fighters was Malcolm X. And
absolutely.
And so, I wouldn't put him in probably my top 10 most influential, but he's in there. But I left Rothbard on the table last. And I think and I did that on purpose because he really does influence every one of us. Everything that you and I talk about, or that we talk about with Nico, or are really the ideas that we really have come to understand in our understanding of what freedom means. It goes through the lens of Murray Rothbard. And you can say, well, but there's, left-leaning anarchists who don't particularly like him, and they point to like Benjamin Tucker as being a better influence than on anarchy than Rothbard was. All that may be true. They didn't fucking get up on a stage and get the third most largest and most powerful political party in this country up and running. And Murray Rothbard helped do that. Murray Rothbard said that he was going to, by any means necessary, was going to fight for liberty. And he laid out the exact philosophy of voluntarism that so many of us really dive into. And, no one in my mind, and I'm influenced from a lot of people. We started this off with Emma Goldman, who was an anarcho-communist. But Murray Rothbard made all of this ideas of real freedom palatable. He made it
he opened up the gate
understood
to let the dogs out. Yeah.
Right.
For sure.
And that's what we needed, because it isn't just about theory. It isn't just about writing a bunch of books. It is about putting your ideas into action. And all of those people that we've talked about, whether we're talking about the crazy Aleister Crowley, or we're talking about Bastiat, or we're talking about any of the other people that we've talked about tonight, those people didn't only think about liberty, they acted on liberty.
Word.
And so that's what we need to do.
Yeah.
Is start acting on liberty.
Yeah, for sure. And so Nico says his internet is shot. Pouring out for Nico for his internet.
For sure. Hopefully
we're gonna have to like dig in on his ancestors the next not the next episode, but on another episode later on. We'll have to grill him on that stuff. All right. So which book are you talking about, Dutch? I see you said Marcus is really going to have you read that book. Are you talking about the Book of the Law by Crowley?
I'm hoping it's something by Murray Rothbard.
I'm thinking it's Aleister Crowley, because the way he says it is it sounds like he's going to be reluctantly taking you up on that. Oh, it is
Okay,
Rothbard.
Rothbard.
Oh, okay. The Anatomy of the State, Hotep Dutch. Read the Anatomy of the State, and then you will just be you'll be right there where you need to be.
And after that, if that's not enough, and it may be, that's what's nice about Anatomy of the State. If it's not enough, Ethics of Liberty is a long discussion that takes
a lot longer.
Yeah.
Anatomy of the State. I'll send you the PDF, and I'll send you the YouTube link, Dutch, so you can listen to it or you can read it. But it's amazing. I don't know. It's really difficult to try to pull that breadth of information into as concise an argument as he makes in that book.
Absolutely.
Because it's like everything. Like, he systematically dismantles the need for forceful, coercive government, and also tells you what's evil about it all at the same time in like an hour.
Right.
It's
right
insane.
For sure. I want to real quick. Rob you're absolutely right about that. Rob had said he'd like to, I'll try to get the link to the Ron Kelly's thing. Amber will know where it's at. I'll try to get that put in here by the end of the night in the links.
Rob's got, y'all go check out Rob. It's the all around growth podcast. It's on a bunch of different platforms. I think he does it through Buzzsprout. But anyway, it's really good. He does, like usually daily. It's an audio podcast where he gives his thoughts and everything. But one of the things he's been talking about, I'm in his Telegram group on there, is this kind of back and forth that he's had with his church and with like the minister there and everything, and like some of the different, the language that's been used and how they've approached a lot of this stuff. And anyway, it's been interesting to listen to his perspective on how those conversations is going, because I'll give Rob the credit for his approach has been very firm, very persistent, but also very like kind and diplomatic and cordial and like compassionate.
Well, we gotta do it.
And putting it in the terms that makes it to where it's not easily dismissible. And that's the thing we have to focus on and not forget, is that sometimes our emotions and the energy, the anger, and like what's the pressure that's being put on us, the stress and everything, can cause us to act out in a way that comes off as belligerent, as badgering and all this other stuff. And it actually serves to like undermine our effort to accomplish what we're trying to accomplish. And so the approach that he took, which is so diplomatic and so he did a much more of a Bastiat sort of approach than a Spooner or a Thomas Paine type of approach. So very Spock of him. And so it's been interesting to hear how that story has evolved. I got to get back in there. I'm like way behind. I think I'm like 300 messages behind on that Telegram group, but I got too many. I'm in too many different things. I say yes to everything. And it catches up with me sometimes and bites me in the ass, but I don't know. I'm one of those people who I look at this as like, if I see something that's good, I don't want to like cut it off. And so I try to stay connected to it because it helps me, and I want to try to help feed into that if I can. The little bit of good that I might be able to do, if any at all. But
you definitely did good here.
But it's really fun to see all of these different conversations and all of these different perspectives that people have, because everybody's going through it from their own different way, either their own church, their own religion, or their own work situation, their own family, their own geographic location, and the culture there and all that kind of stuff. And so I try to like keep all that stuff as connected as possible, because I think it helps me to do a better job of navigating my own situation, because I have a little bit more. It's like you kind of get get like a little sprinkle cross-pollination of their experiences so that you can help them inform yours.
Absolutely. And that comes back to that. And I'm going to butcher the quote, so I'm not going to try. But that idea that Thomas Paine talked about is that, you have to look at how other people are going to be impacted by whatever you decide to do, because, this is not an unconnected world. And, just because we believe in the individual doesn't mean that. And I love that, for life and liberty, dream, plan, act. Exactly. But we have to understand that we're not in this alone. This is, as much
we're all
as
in
I
this
believe
together.
right. We are all in this together.
I know, but I know.
We're all in this together.
All except for Nancy Pelosi and her ice cream.
For sure. But no, I really like the whole idea of cooperation is greater than coercion. I really like that idea that, why is it not acceptable to for us to volunteer to help each other? I don't understand.
Yeah. Well, and people think too that, like, when I say like voluntary or voluntarily, collaborating or anything like that, people, not everybody, because our people are good people and they get it.
Right.
But a lot of other people who I'm trying to, they're still my people. They're still my people, but damn, it's hard. A lot of people think that means that, like, people are just doing shit for giggles and for free, and that they don't expect, like, no, I'm not saying you shouldn't, like,
pay somebody.
That you should be like enslaved to give your shit away for free or anything like that. I'm just saying that, like, hey, Marcus, here's $30. Can you send me that whatever t-shirt?
Right.
Yeah, cool. All right, cool. That's voluntary. The non-voluntary shit is, hey, I'm stealing some money from you. And if you're lucky, after you give me $300 that I held a gun to your head and told you to give me,
I'll give you
a t-shirt. But in the meantime, the other $270 worth is going to me and all my homies. No, that's the thing that people, I don't know, it's a frustration for me that people don't understand that voluntary doesn't necessarily mean that everyone has to be volunteering at the food bank all the time and not making anything. Like no, like you can, we can just, almost everything that you do on a day in, day out basis is anarchistic and voluntary. Even like,
for sure,
I stop at red lights not because I'm afraid I'm going to get a ticket. I stop at red lights because we have like this little agreement that, like, hey, if we all stop at the red lights and go when the light's green, we don't crash into each other. And those lights could happen without all the fucking theft and everything else, because we do that kind of shit in like our offices where there's like different little things that we put like a little mirror up on the hallway so you don't like run into somebody when you're turning, if it's a, one of those things where you can't see around the corner. Anyway, none of this stuff needs somebody stealing shit from people and murdering people all over the world to make it happen.
And to your point,
it doesn't mean that we're going to just start like, fuck that, I'm driving through all the intersections with red lights because I don't give a fuck anymore and nobody can stop me. No, that's not what we are about. That's not what anarchy is. That's like, that's actually the shit that the people who fucking do all this shit do.
All the time. Yeah. And the thing is, people will say, that oh, but who's going to power that up, Chad? Who's going to power it up? Who's going to make that light work? Well, the businesses that don't want people crashed out in front of their goddamn business.
Right.
That's who's going to power it up. They're going to take the $20 that it costs them a month to not have wrecks out in front of their goddamn house or out in front of their business. Duh. I would.
My uncle wants to get from his house to his barn. He makes a path.
Right.
Like, it's not that fucking complicated. Like, and I know we're talking about shit on a larger scale, but like on that larger scale, you're going to be dealing with a different budget than my uncle getting from his house to his barn.
Right.
So, I mean, there's so much of this stuff that is so much more easily organized and like for instance, there's a game on PlayStation that I got like 2 years ago or whenever it was. It's called Hellpoint. I think I started Kickstarter. I backed that thing on Kickstarter for $20 like 4 or 5 years ago. It finally came out after like 3 years of development, and it was all crowdfunded through Kickstarter.
Yeah.
Like nobody had to hold a gun to anybody's head or anything like that. They found a way, and shout out to like Kickstarter and GoFundMe and some of these other things that they have found these little creative ways to use the internet and crowdsourcing and crowdfunding to make certain projects happen that without that, you'd have to go through, I don't know, the SBA process, and then you'd be beholden to all these other, loan takers and interest makers and rent seekers and all this kind of stuff.
Sure.
Instead, what you got was, hey, look, if you donate this much money by this date, when we complete this, now you understand that there's not a guarantee that this game's going to get made, and it might take a while, but we promise that when we make it, your name's going to be in the credits, or you're going to get this t-shirt or this swag. You donate $1,000, and because there were people who were donating $1,000, $5,000 to this project because they wanted to support the industry and support the idea and everything. That's so simply the way of the future. And then also back to video games again, when you're dealing with like safety and regulatory type stuff, the game rating systems in magazines and like online with people reviewing it, you don't need a federal board to tell you that Cyberpunk sucked.
Yeah. Everybody
who got it told you that it sucked.
It sucked. Right. Yeah.
And so then they put a lot of pressure on the creators, and that's how this stuff should be. And it's not that complicated. But anyway,
for sure.
It's I digest.
That's okay. And Chad, the thing is, that book that you bought me by Walter Block on the privatizing the roads,
yeah,
dude. If libertarians of any stripe would read the introduction, not just the book. The book's excellent. As an aside, book is excellent. They would read the introduction to that book. They would have roads handled, like any of this stuff, any of the infrastructure, any of the, well, what would we do without this? What would we do without that? He handles the fuck out of that in the introduction of it. Right. And there's two takeaways that I think people need to understand when, and we probably ought to wrap up, but when as it relates to the future and moving towards liberty. And those things are, one, we certainly can fucking do better than the state.
Yep.
Because they suck at everything. Number two, wouldn't you want a more peaceful life? Because when the state touches it, it's violence. Don't you want peace? If you can choose two different ways to do this, would you choose getting hit over the head with a baseball bat to get it? Or would you take somebody handing you a flower? So, it really is that simple.
Yeah. So let's remind everybody we are getting close to the end here, and it is almost 8:00 Eastern time, and you know what 8:00 Eastern time is? That is the Uncle Hotep Factor on Uncle Hotep's channel. So after we're done here, be sure to go over and show your support there. I'm going to go hop on and listen there. I may jump in on the spaces too and get in on the conversation at some point. We'll see where where the conversation goes. But this has been fun. I'm not going to lie. There's a certain disappointment that one Nico Augustive was not in attendance for the lion's share of this, because I really want to hear, but all this does is this sets up for a really great episode where me and you just get to spend the entire episode talking to Nico about his freedom ancestors, because I think that's I want to kind of get into, it's been 1.5 years now that he's been on the show with us, and I kind of want to get his perspective on all this stuff after that 18 months of listen to our two crazy asses talk about this stuff all the time, and how some of what he's the people he's gotten a chance to interview, and the different influences, the different references and books and knowledge and everything, how that aligns with some of the stuff that he already had in his arsenal before he joined, and like what he's been doing, because I know he's, we all see it every episode. We see Nico's big stack of books. So what's he reading? What has it done? What kind of influence has that had on him? And what can we learn from him? Because it's real easy, me being, damn near 48 and you being
damn near 47.
You're damn near 47 now. Yeah. So it's easy for us to think of this from the standpoint of it's our job to kind of help coach and teach Nico along, because he's so much younger than us. He's half our age. But you and I would both be fucking frauds if we didn't say that we have learned a shit ton from that young man.
Absolutely.
So I'm excited to be able to pick his brain on where his influences are and what they come from, because there are a lot of people who study a lot, who can come across, and I'll even put myself in that category. Like I've had the different influences, and it's like little light bulbs have come on, but I was nowhere close to as aware and as attuned to what the real is as Nico is when I was his age. Not even close, not even in the same universe, let alone the same ballpark. So he deserves his flowers. We just need him to get his internet fixed. So this is the time Nico would wrap it for us. I'm not gonna wrap $5 Patreon.
$5 Patreon.
That's right. So go to the Patreon if you're not already a subscriber. Show us some love. The link is in the description.
Sketch has been taking care of it too.
Yeah, right. Yeah, thank you so much, Sketch, for coming in here. And I apologize. Like the chat is like full of stuff, and I can't, like, I'm trying to listen to Marcus, and I'm thinking of my own stuff, and we're both kind of going back and forth. So I haven't read everything, but I'm going to go back through and read the chat later. I appreciate you guys being in there and keeping it lively. It's good stuff as always, and we appreciate you guys being here. But yeah, go to the Patreon, subscribe at the $5 level. You get to join our Telegram chat. I got my 3D printer a few weeks back. I have some more filament on the way. I'm gonna start making shit, y'all. I can't wait to show some of it off. I'm gonna make like some, I don't know, I might make some little icons and stuff like that of the show logo and shit and different things. But there's so much stuff in that Telegram chat that you just don't even know what you're missing, and I want y'all to be a part of it. But also, go to the Teespring store. I'm wearing my, because I knew we were going to get into some spirituality stuff. I'm wearing my Y'all Need Jesus shirt, but Marcus is repping the gear for the channel. And on the Teespring store, link also in the description. You can get that. He's got the banner behind us with the logo. Got all kind of stuff. I saw Javon Smiley sent me a picture on Twitter yesterday. He was repping the Make Anarchy Great Again hoodie.
Nice.
Shout out to Javon. It's great to see that stuff out there, because we've got some really badass stuff. I have my I Vetoed shirt over there. I wore it over here, but I wanted to wear this tonight for the show. But,
nice. I like
anyway,
the
we
Let's
appreciate
Go
everybody.
Brandon shirt. That was
for
fun.
sure.
That was, and there's also due to one of our Twitter followers who Heffalumps or something like that. Wonderful suggestion. Made the T-shirt. We are the Taliban from the last. We are the Taliban of the anarchist community.
That's right.
Yes.
Facts. Let's go. So anyway, with that, y'all know what time it is. It is almost time for Uncle Hotep Factor. Hop on over to Uncle Hotep's channel as soon as the closed music ends. And with that, we remind everyone,
stay free.
Peace, y'all.